Well, welcome to the second lecture in the series under the title of Optics. In this particular lecture, we're going to kind of go over some of the technical aspects of the optics themselves, although we're not going to get too in-depth. There's books written on this subject, taken into the mathematic level and so forth, and if one is interested in this, and it is an interesting subject, the internet nowadays has far more in it and in detail than we could cover here. Here we're just going to try to give a basic overview that is at the user level, that will make some of the technology and the technical issues a little more user-friendly to understand and utilize. The first thing we want to know about optics, as it pertains to somebody that's looking into the wilderness, actually wanting to experience the wilderness at a greater level, is there's basically two kinds. There's your binoculars and your spotting scopes. And I don't want to, at this time I'll make the disclaimer, I'm not trying to advertise or push any particular make and model, but we're just using different things for examples. And the difference, getting back to why we have binoculars and spotting scopes, they're two very different instruments. And what I like to say is that a binocular, regardless of its size, whether it's something like this 80-20 or this little 36 by 80 binocular, is to look for something, whereas a spotting scope is more to look at something. Now, as we'll get into other discussions, we'll talk about some of the strategies that they entail and how you can utilize them, and the fact that, of course, you can look at something with a binocular and you can hunt for something with a spotting scope, and there are differences. And those differences make quite a bit of difference in how you use them and how they'll perform for you. But getting back to some of the technical issues, there are basically two other types of optics that are both in the binocular, although not as common, and in the spotting scope, and that is the difference between a fixed power and a zoom. Now, a lot of times people think zoom in terms of only being good, but in fact, while a zoom has its place, and you usually find them in spotting scopes, they do have their price and performance. Most of the time, if you have a spotting scope, let's say, that can have interchangeable lenses, one of the things you'll find that, say, a 20 power zoom lens will have half the field of view as a fixed lens, the fixed 20. And the reason for this is the zoom is a very complex lens with many lenses in it, and you just can't get that much light through it, basically, and the complexity, and one of the ways to get rid of that is to reduce the field of view. And so instead of having the full fireplace, so to speak, in view, you'd only have half with a zoom lens, to kind of give an example, as a price. And also you're going to have a darker image, because every time you put light through a lens, it's going to eat up 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 or 10% of the light, depending on the quality of the optics, but it eats up some of the light. And the zoom lens has a number of different lenses added to it, and so it eats up more light. And each lens, no matter how perfect and well coated and produced, has some level of distortion. And there's different types of distortion. There's image distortion, there's color distortions, and so forth. But distortion is distortion, and in the end that degrades the image, and as it degrades the image, you end up putting something on with a zoom lens or fixed, and you say, well, I can crank it up, the image does get bigger, but I still can't tell whether that's a branch or a set of antlers, because the image is taken up in distortion. So that's one thing to consider when you're looking, especially at a set of binoculars or a spotting scope. A fixed power isn't necessarily bad and has its advantages, as does a zoom. Another basic understanding of the optics, whether it's a spotting scope or a pair of binoculars, is most of them you'll find will have a designation something like 10 by 50. That's what this set of binoculars is, and the 10, of course, is the magnification, and the 50 is the distance, the diameter of the objective lens, the lens in the very front. And the bigger this lens, the more light gathering capacity you have. Now, all things being equal, and they rarely are, the bigger the lens, the better. However, quality of design and the optical elements, the lenses and the prisms and so forth, and the reflectors and all that makes such a difference that sometimes you'll find that you can have a 50 mm, say a 10 by 50, and a higher quality, smaller, say maybe a 40 by 8, might actually have more range and more power to resolve an image than its bigger cousin, simply because it's a better piece of glass, basically. This is not unusual. And so quality makes a difference. It's something that most people don't want to hear because it ends up meaning money. But it does make a difference. The quality of the glass makes a tremendous difference. And one of the ways to view this is the better the glass, the better the experience, or you might say a certain set of binoculars might give the user, for every 10 days, it gets him 12 or 13 or 14 days. And a higher quality binocular might get him a full 10. So he spends 10 days in the field and actually has 10 days of experience as opposed to the person with the lesser optics. And so over an accumulation of time, the more expensive optics become a bargain. So it's something to think about. And another thing to really consider whenever you're looking at optics or thinking about buying something, as the power goes up, you get less light, you get more distortion, and so on. And so don't be fooled by just the number. You know, that 10 is not necessarily better than 15 if it's not supported by the quality of optics, the optical elements, the lenses. And another thing I would tell you that you want to do if you're looking at optics, I have found it very useful to actually go to some place that has a number of different brands and whatnot, and actually look through them and see what you can see across the room or across the street, how easy they come up to your eyes, and these kind of things. And I think in the end, when you do that, you'll have an instrument that's far more pleasing and better suited to your particular needs. And with that, I think we'll conclude this particular portion on optics, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be able to make use of it. I thank you.